to step aside. For more on this, I'm joined by Democratic Congressman Bera from California. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be on, Chanel.
Well, thank you. There are new complaints from Democrats, as you just heard. Dunes is interfering, even trying to sabotage the probe to protect the president. What's your take?
He recused himself. He ought to stay out of this, and we ought to put a special investigation together. Let's take it out of the hands of the Democrats and Republicans. Let's have a special committee take a look at what happened in this last election and make recommendations on how we prevent this in the future.
I think this is a fair question. How can you maintain the integrity of the investigation with all of these reports of, frankly, political infighting?
Right. You can't. Look at what we did post 9/11. You took it out of the hands of Congress, you took it out of the hands of the politicians, and you put together a special investigation that did a thorough job, came back with recommendations to protect the country. We know a foreign government interfered with our elections. That shouldn't be a Democratic or a Republican issue. Let's prevent this from happening again.
Well, the House has issued subpoenas to Trump attorney Michael Cohen and General Flynn. What insight do you hope to gain from their testimony?
Well, we want to know what happened, right? And they ought to testify. Taking the fifth here, if they're innocent, if nothing happened, why are they hiding? That's the same thing. If President Trump thinks nothing happened, turn over all your documentations, open things up. If you're innocent, you shouldn't have anything to hide, Mr. President.
Let's tackle another big topic, pivoting from Russia to climate change. The state of California, of course, one of the states that will commit to the Paris Accord. Can you be effective without leadership from the White House?
Well, you're not going to see leadership out of the White House on this issue, or even out of the Republican majority. So kudos to Governor Brown here in California, as well as the states and mayors all across this country. They get it. They get this is about economic growth. This is about protecting our planet, and they're stepping up to the plate. So if you don't have that leadership in the White House, well, we all have to step up as Americans. And again, I think you'll see that leadership in the states and the cities.
Congressman, looking forward, how, in your opinion, does the president's decision affect the cooperation that he needs on things like health care and tax reform going forward, or does it?
Well, he still hasn't reached out to Democrats for our ideas. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen that out of Speaker of the House Paul Ryan either. What we've got to do is we've got to stop fighting as Democrats and Republicans. We've got to come together and start solving the challenges that our nation faces. If you're going to do tax reform, let's come up with tax policy that helps working class families, middle class families, and that next generation. What we've seen out of the White House is he wants to do something that's going to reward the 1%. That's exactly the wrong thing to do.
Well, I guarantee you there are viewers watching who want something done. So what would you say? Where are some of the areas where you can see cooperation, if you will? Would it be infrastructure, perhaps?
Absolutely. And, we've reached out multiple times. We've all got roads, bridges, highways that are in need of repair. Rural America needs broadband access. So if we were to go there, and that's what we'd suggest, let's actually rebuild America. Let's put people to work, and you'll find Democrats and Republicans willing to work together.
What about health care?
Health care, the first thing we ought to do is make sure they don't take health care away from 23 million Americans. So let's get rid of that. There's places where we could fix and make the Affordable Care Act better. We've got to create more competition. And again, we've reached out to Republicans and said, hey, work with us on this. In California, the Affordable Care Act's working pretty well. We've cut the number of uninsured in half. We've got a lot of competition. We've marketed to young people. They're signing up. So there's a lot that we could share from California, but work with us on this. Let's get the next 20 million insured. You
said there are places where we could see, improvement or where it could be better. What are those places?
Again, I don't disagree if in a state you only have one health plan in an exchange. What we ought to do is what we did in California, work with the health insurance companies to create competition to give people choice. You also have to get those young people enrolled. We've done in California a lot of marketing to young people to get them into the exchanges, and it's been successful. We ought to work with the administration in states to do that as well. If you get everyone in the healthcare system, you get coverage, you start preventing disease, and you start lowering costs. And I say that as a doctor.
We talked about health care. We just talked about infrastructure. If we pull back and look at the overall picture, obviously, whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, if you're a viewer, you want something to get done. But it seems like for the last, I don't know how many Saturdays, I'm constantly talking about scandal. Can the job of the country, can work move forward if we're constantly, I guess, mired in all of this scandal?
We have to. If the White House isn't going to have that leadership, we ought to do it as members of Congress, right? Our founders set up a division of government The legislative branch, the House, should step up. We ought to be negotiating, putting laws together that help all of America. I don't expect the White House to change. We have what we have here.